What if I told you there is a condition affecting 8 out of 10 women going through perimenopause right now? A condition that is silently locking fat in storage, draining your energy, clouding your thinking, and disrupting your sleep. And that your last blood test almost certainly did not check for it, not because your doctor made an error, not because of negligence, but because the standard blood panel that most physicians order tests the wrong marker. It checks fasting glucose, and glucose looks perfectly normal for years, sometimes for a decade, while this condition is already building inside your body. Your result comes back normal. Your doctor says you are fine, and you walk out of that appointment still exhausted, still gaining weight around your middle no matter what you eat, still wondering what is wrong with you. I want to tell you today what that appointment never did. My name is Nora, and I have spent years going through the peer-reviewed research that your 15-minute appointment does not have time to cover. Every week on this channel, I translate what the science actually says about what is happening inside a woman's body during perimenopause and menopause in plain language, with real numbers and with specific steps you can take starting this week. Today, I am talking about insulin resistance, not as a diabetes topic, as a menopause topic, as the hidden hormonal condition that is behind more of what you're experiencing right now than almost anything else, and that almost no one is connecting to this stage of your life. I am not a physician, and nothing in this video replaces a conversation with your doctor. What I am giving you today is information, real research-backed information, so that when you do have that conversation, you walk in knowing exactly what questions to ask. You deserve that conversation, you deserve those answers. In this video, I am going to cover 3 things. First, what insulin resistance actually is, explained in a way that makes the biology completely clear. Second, exactly why the hormonal transition of perimenopause causes it to develop in most women, whether they are overweight or not. Third, 5 specific ranked steps that address it at the root level, with exact protocols. Before I go further, I want to tease something for you right now. Number 1 on this list, the single most powerful step for restoring insulin sensitivity in a woman over 40, is something that 9 out of 10 women are either not doing or doing in a way that is actively making insulin resistance worse, not better. Worse? The research on this surprised even me when I first read it. Stay until the end for that one. The order matters, each step builds on the last, and before we go any further, leave me a comment right now, tell me your age, and tell me this. Has your doctor ever ordered a fasting insulin test? Not a glucose test, a fasting insulin test. I want to know, I read every single comment on this channel, what insulin resistance actually is. Let me start with something that most health channels get wrong. Insulin resistance is not a diabetes condition. It is a cellular communication breakdown, and understanding that distinction is what changes everything about how you approach it. Here's what insulin does. Every time you eat, glucose enters your bloodstream. Insulin, produced by your pancreas, acts as a messenger. It travels to your cells and knocks on the door. It says, glucose is here, open up, let it in. Your cells respond, the door opens, glucose enters and gets used for energy. Clean, efficient, the system runs perfectly. Now, here's what happens when insulin resistance develops. Insulin knocks on the door, the cell does not answer. It knocks again, still no answer. Your pancreas thinks, the message is not getting through, I need to send more messengers. So it produces more insulin, more knocking, still no response. The cell walls have become resistant to insulin's signal, so glucose has nowhere to go. It stays in the bloodstream. Your pancreas keeps producing more and more insulin, trying to force the door open. And chronically elevated insulin does something very specific. It locks your fat cells shut. Fat cannot leave storage. Your body starts breaking down muscle for energy instead, and the glucose that cannot get into cells gets converted by your liver into fat, specifically visceral fat, the dangerous kind that builds around your organs. 80% of women develop some degree of insulin resistance during perimenopause and menopause, even if they are not overweight. Endocrine Society cited in clinical research. 2024, 2025, 80%. That is not a rare condition. That is the experience of most women going through this transition, and most of them have no idea it is happening because their glucose test came back normal. Why menopause specifically causes it? Estrogen was your insulin's closest ally. This is the connection that almost nobody explains. When estrogen is present at healthy levels, it does something remarkable. It acts as a sensitizer for insulin. It helps your cells hear insulin signal clearly. It enhances glucose uptake in your skeletal muscles. It keeps the communication between insulin and your cells sharp and responsive. When you had healthy estrogen levels, your cells answered insulin's knock immediately, every time. Then perimenopause begins. Estrogen starts declining. That sensitizing effect, the thing that kept your cells responsive to insulin, starts disappearing. Your muscle cells become progressively less able to absorb glucose. Your pancreas compensates by producing more insulin and more and more. There is a 2025 study of nearly 1,000 women that confirmed what researchers have been seeing in clinical practice for years. Compared to premenopausal women, early menopausal women had a measurably higher rate of insulin resistance, not from eating more, not from exercising less, from the hormonal transition itself. Here is what nobody explains. These processes do not happen in sequence. They happen simultaneously and they amplify each other. Declining estrogen reduces insulin sensitivity. Reduced insulin sensitivity causes elevated insulin. Elevated insulin locks fat in storage. Locked fat drives cortisol higher. Higher cortisol reduces estrogen further. It is a cycle and it accelerates with every passing month that it goes unaddressed. Your body is not broken. Your body is running exactly the program it was designed to run when estrogen declines. But that program was never designed for a world where you need to function at full capacity for another 40 years after this transition begins. That is why understanding this and giving your body what it actually needs changes everything. Why your doctor never caught it. This is the part that frustrates me most, and I say that with full respect for physicians, because this is a systemic gap, not individual negligence. Standard annual blood panels test fasting glucose. Glucose is the amount of sugar in your bloodstream right now, and glucose looks perfectly normal for years, sometimes for an entire decade, while insulin resistance is already well established and building inside your body. Why? Because your pancreas is overcompensating. It is producing so much extra insulin that it manages to keep glucose in the normal range for a while. Your glucose is normal because your pancreas is working 5 times as hard as it should be. The test that measures how hard it is working, fasting insulin, is not on the standard panel. The test that would catch insulin resistance early is called a fasting insulin test. It is not the same as fasting glucose. It measures how much insulin your pancreas is producing. Optimal fasting insulin, 2 to 6 micro-IU ml. Above 10, insulin resistance is already present. Most women with insulin resistance have fasting insulin between 15 and 25. With glucose, that looks completely normal. The next time you see your doctor, ask directly, I would like a fasting insulin test added to my panel, not just fasting glucose, fasting insulin. That one request could give you information that changes your entire approach to your health right now. The 7 signs, you already have it. You do not need a lab test to recognize insulin resistance. Your body has been showing you the signs. Here's what to look for. 1, belly fat that appeared suddenly and will not move. The visceral fat that builds specifically from elevated insulin. It does not respond to calorie restriction or sit-ups because the fat storage lock is hormonal, not caloric. 2, energy crash. 1 to 2 hours after eating, when cells cannot absorb glucose efficiently, blood sugar spikes and then crashes hard after eating. That afternoon slump, especially after lunch, is your cells telling you they cannot process what just arrived. 3, strong sugar and carbohydrate cravings, especially in the afternoon. Elevated insulin actually makes you hungrier. When cells are not receiving glucose properly, your brain signals hunger even when you just ate. This is biology, not weakness. 4, brain fog that comes and goes. Your brain runs on glucose. When insulin resistance means glucose cannot enter cells efficiently, your brain gets inconsistent fuel. The fogginess, the word searching, the difficulty concentrating, this is your brain running on an unreliable signal. 5, waking between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., elevated overnight insulin disrupts the blood sugar stability your body needs for uninterrupted sleep. The midnight cortisol spike that wakes you is directly connected to insulin dysregulation the day before. 6, skin tags or darkening around the neck and underarms. Acanthosis nigricans, a clinical sign of elevated insulin that your doctor is trained to recognize. Darkening or thickening of skin and folds is one of the earliest visible signs of chronically elevated insulin. 7, feeling hungry even shortly after eating a full meal. Your cells are literally starving for glucose even when your bloodstream has plenty. Insulin resistance creates cellular hunger that no amount of food can fully satisfy until the root cause is addressed. How many of those 7 apply to you right now? I want you to leave that number in the comments. I read every single one. I want to tell you about Jennifer, 49 years old, a marketing director from Denver, Colorado. She had been to her OBGYN twice in the past 18 months. Both visits she was told her labs were normal. Her estrogen was declining, expected for her age. Her glucose was fine. She was sent home with a pamphlet about menopause. Jennifer had gained 14 pounds in 14 months, almost exactly a pound a month. She was eating less than she had eaten in her 30s. She was doing 45 minutes of cardio 5 days a week. She was sleeping 7 hours. On paper, everything should have been working. Her fasting insulin had never been tested. When we looked at her complete hormonal picture, her fasting insulin came back at 18.4 microunit/ml. Her glucose was 94, technically normal. Her insulin was nearly 4 times the optimal range, and her doctor had no idea because the test was never ordered. Her body was in full insulin resistance. Her pancreas had been overcompensating for so long, but glucose still looked fine. Meanwhile, everything she was doing, the 5 days of cardio, the calorie restriction, was actually making her cortisol worse and compounding the insulin resistance further. Within 10 weeks of addressing the root cause directly, her energy returned within the first 2 weeks. Her sleep consolidated. The afternoon cravings stopped almost completely. And for the first time in 18 months, the number on the scale started moving in the right direction without changing how much she ate. She told me, "I spent a year and a half thinking my body had broken. It had not broken. It had been running the wrong program, and nobody had given me the right one." If what I am sharing is giving you something your appointments have not, please take 2 seconds and hit subscribe. I post new videos every week covering exactly this kind of research. The science your doctor knows, but your 15-minute appointment simply cannot cover. Subscribing costs nothing, and it means you will not miss what comes next. Okay, let us get into the 5 steps. Now I want to walk you through the 5 most evidence-backed steps for restoring insulin sensitivity, ranked from helpful to the one that most women are getting completely wrong. These are not generic healthy lifestyle tips. These are specific interventions that address the hormonal mechanism we have just spent the last 14 minutes understanding. Number 5, remove the morning insulin spike. The first hour after waking is the most hormonally critical window of the entire day for a woman with insulin resistance. And most women are unknowingly doing the one thing that spikes insulin hardest during that window. Here is what the research shows. In women over 40 with elevated insulin, consuming refined carbohydrates or sugary beverages, including sweetened coffee drinks, flavored creamers, fruit juice, or even certain protein bars, within the first 60 minutes of waking produces an insulin spike that sets the metabolic tone for the entire day. That spike drives cortisol higher, cortisol drives more fat storage, and the cycle runs for the next 16 hours. A 2022 study in nutrition and metabolism found that women who consumed a high-protein, low-glycemic breakfast within 45 minutes of waking showed significantly better insulin response throughout the entire day compared to women who skipped. Breakfast or consumed refined carbohydrates first. The practical step: within 45 minutes of waking, 30 to 40 grams of protein, eggs, Greek yogurt, chicken, a quality protein shake, no sweetened beverages, no refined carbohydrates. That protein signal tells your pancreas resources are available, stand down, insulin response normalizes, the rest of the day runs cleaner. Common mistake: skipping breakfast entirely. While intermittent fasting can help insulin resistance, and we will get to that, skipping breakfast without addressing what you eat when you break the fast often makes morning cortisol and insulin dysregulation worse in perimenopausal women specifically. Number 4, build skeletal muscle. Your body's primary insulin disposal system. Skeletal muscle is the largest insulin-sensitive tissue in your body. It is responsible for the majority of insulin-stimulated glucose disposal. When your muscles work, they absorb glucose from your bloodstream independently of insulin. They essentially open the back door when insulin cannot get the front door open. A landmark study from Tufts University found that postmenopausal women who perform resistance training twice per week for 12 weeks showed a measurable and significant improvement in insulin sensitivity without any dietary changes. The muscle itself did the metabolic work, and here is the critical detail. Cardio does not build this kind of insulin-sensitive muscle mass. Running, cycling, spinning, these burn calories during the session, but do not create the sustained improvement in cellular insulin sensitivity that resistance training produces. 2 to 3 sessions per week of intentional muscle-loading bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, light to moderate weights, is sufficient. You do not need a gym. You need progressive resistance. Pair every resistance session with 25 to 35 grams of protein within 45 minutes of finishing. That post-exercise window is when your muscle cells are most receptive to rebuilding. Protein and resistance training together produce an insulin sensitizing effect that is greater than either alone. Common mistake: doing only high-intensity cardio and wondering why insulin resistance is not improving. High-intensity cardio spikes cortisol. Cortisol drives insulin resistance. You are working hard and worsening the root cause simultaneously. Number 3, time-restricted eating. The specific window that works for women. Giving your body extended periods without food allows insulin to fall completely to baseline. This is the only time your fat cells can open, when insulin is at its lowest. Without regular fasting windows, your fat storage locks never fully release. A small study of 31 women found that time-restricted eating was equally effective at helping both perimenopausal and postmenopausal women lose fat and improve insulin sensitivity. The key finding was that the timing of the eating window matters as much as its length. For women over 40 specifically, a 12 to 14-hour overnight fast is more effective and more sustainable than aggressive 16 to 18-hour fasting windows. Why? Because extreme fasting windows spike cortisol, and elevated cortisol, as we covered in detail in the last video, drives insulin resistance directly. The practical protocol: finish eating by 7 p.m., eat your first meal of the day at 7 a.m. or later. That is a 12-hour window. No heroic willpower required. No skipping social situations. Just a consistent cutoff that allows insulin to fall fully overnight and your fat cells to open during sleep. Common mistake: going 18 or 20 hours without eating in an attempt to aggressively fix insulin resistance. In women with elevated cortisol, which is most women in perimenopause, extended fasting windows produce a cortisol spike that worsens insulin resistance rather than improving it. Number 2, the food category that acts as a direct insulin sensitizer. There is one food category that the research consistently shows improves insulin sensitivity directly, not through weight loss, not through calorie reduction, but through a specific biological mechanism that works at the cellular level. It is fiber. Specifically, soluble fiber from whole food sources. Here's the mechanism. Soluble fiber slows glucose absorption from your digestive tract into your bloodstream. When glucose enters more slowly, your pancreas produces less insulin to manage it. Lower insulin response after meals means lower overall daily insulin exposure. Lower daily insulin exposure means your cells gradually begin responding to insulin signal again. A meta-analysis published in Diabetes Care reviewing 35 randomized controlled trials found that increased dietary fiber intake significantly reduced fasting insulin levels and improved insulin sensitivity in women with metabolic dysfunction, independent of weight loss. The practical target: 25 to 30 grams of soluble fiber daily from whole food sources, legumes, black beans, lentils, chickpeas, oats, berries, apples with skin, flaxseed, chia seeds, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli. These are not superfoods in the generic sense. They are specific insulin sensitizers backed by clinical evidence. The additional protocol: always eat fiber before or with carbohydrates, never carbohydrates alone. The fiber blunts the glucose spike. The glucose spike blunted means insulin stays lower. This one sequencing change can reduce post-meal insulin response by up to 30%, according to research from Stanford University. Common mistake: removing carbohydrates entirely as the first intervention. While reducing refined carbohydrates is important, completely eliminating carbohydrates without replacing them with fiber-rich whole food sources removes the very substrate that fiber needs to work with. Extreme restriction also spikes cortisol. Number 1, the sleep insulin reset. The step 9 out of 10 women are getting wrong. I promised you at the beginning of this video that number 1 would surprise you. That most women are either not doing it or doing it in a way that is actively worsening insulin resistance. Here it is. It is sleep, but not sleep as a passive recovery tool. Sleep as an active insulin regulation mechanism. Here is what the research shows and why it surprised me. A single night of poor sleep, defined as under 6 hours or highly fragmented sleep, produces measurable insulin resistance the following day, not over weeks, not cumulatively over months. The next morning, your cells wake up less responsive to insulin than they were the day before, purely from one night of disrupted sleep. 15% increase in next day cortisol from a single night of sleep, shortened by just 90 minutes. which directly worsens insulin resistance. University of Chicago sleep studies, and here is the part that most women are getting wrong. They are taking melatonin at midnight and expecting sleep to restore their insulin sensitivity. But the growth hormone window, the phase of deep sleep where insulin sensitivity gets reset, happens between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. If you are going to sleep at midnight or later, you are missing the primary restoration window regardless of how many total hours you sleep. The same 8 hours of sleep starting at 10 p.m. versus midnight produces completely different insulin outcomes the next day. Earlier sleep, deeper restoration, better insulin response, lower cortisol, fat storage begins to unlock. The specific sleep protocol that the research supports for insulin sensitivity restoration: consistent sleep time, 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. every night including weekends. Your insulin regulation does not take days off. Room temperature 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Core body temperature must drop to initiate the deep sleep phase where insulin sensitivity resets. Complete darkness. Even small amounts of light suppress melatonin, which is required to gate deep sleep entry. No food within 3 hours of sleep. Eating close to sleep keeps insulin elevated overnight and prevents the fasting window your cells need to restore sensitivity. No screens 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Harvard Medical School research shows screen use delays sleep onset by an average of 49 minutes, cutting directly into the restoration window. Jennifer's first breakthrough was sleep. Before we changed a single thing she ate or how she exercised, we moved her bedtime from 12:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. and implemented the temperature and darkness protocol. Within 10 days, her morning energy had changed noticeably. Within 3 weeks, her afternoon cravings had reduced significantly. The sleep reset created the hormonal foundation that made everything else possible. Let me bring this together. 80% of women going through perimenopause develop insulin resistance. Most of them never know because the standard blood test does not check for it. Their glucose looks normal, their doctor says they are fine, and they spend months, sometimes years, working harder and harder against a hormonal current that nobody identified for them. The 5 steps we cover today: removing the morning insulin spike, building skeletal muscle, establishing a 12-hour eating window, adding fiber as a direct insulin sensitizer, and resetting your sleep to restore overnight insulin sensitivity. These are not wellness suggestions. They are evidence-based interventions that address the root cause at the biological level. None of this requires a prescription. None of this requires expensive testing or extreme interventions. It requires understanding what is actually happening inside your body and giving it what it needs at this specific stage of life. Your body has not failed you. The information you were given failed you. That changes today. Number 5, remove morning insulin spike. 3040 protein within 45 minutes of waking. Sets metabolic tone for the day. Number 4, build skeletal muscle. 2-3 resistance sessions per week. Muscles absorb glucose independent of insulin. Number 3, time-restricted eating, 12-hour overnight fast. Allows insulin to fall fully to baseline. Number 2, fiber as insulin sensitizer. 2530 soluble fiber daily. Slows glucose absorption, lowers insulin response. Number 1, sleep insulin reset. Sleep by 10:30 p.m. Restores insulin sensitivity overnight through the growth hormone window. If this gave you something today, please share this video with a woman you know who is in this chapter and has been told her labs are fine while she still feels terrible. She needs this information. You could be the person who changes how she understands what is happening in her body. Subscribe if you are not already here. Every week I go this deep into what is actually happening inside a woman's body during this transition. Real research, real language, no shortcuts, and leave me that comment right now. How many of the 7 signs applied to you? Has your doctor ever ordered a fasting insulin test? I will be reading every single one. I am Nora, and I will see you in the next video.